Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to use the model that we just created, the simple toothbrush LCA, to introduce parameters. Parameters are really useful for answering questions around the design and manufacture of products. For example, this toothbrush says I've got 4 grams of nylon 6 and 29 grams of polypropylene coming together to form the bristles and the handle. What if I wanted to change the amount of material that was being used? There's a few different ways we could look at that. The first is simply updating the numbers in my model. And that's a little bit tedious and a little bit time intensive if you want to do this for more than one or two scenarios. Parameters let us set up the model with expressions instead of these exact values. And those expressions can then be used in scenario analysis to let us run a whole series of models side by side. There are two basic ways to set up parameters. The first is from the top nav menu. We can go edit parameters. Or to access this menu from anywhere in the Carbon Graph platform, just right-click on the background and go Add Parameter. The first parameter we're going to add is for this bristle fabrication. In the model as it stands, we've got 4 grams worth of nylon 6 being transformed into one bristle pack. But what if we had 2 grams or 10 grams or 200 grams? We could manually go through, enter the value, and calculate the results. But like we said, that's pretty time intensive and tedious. Instead, let's use the nylon 6 value here. We're actually just going to put a parameter or an expression in here. So again, I'm going to right click, add parameter, and then this menu pops up. I'll click add parameter, and then I've just got to kind of go through and answer each of these fields. I can put in a default value that will show up in the model and units. And then I can set limits so that if I'm ever outside of these limits, I can get a warning. So let's say, the limit is 1 gram worth of bristles and the upper end is 25 grams worth of bristles. And once I've done that, I just click away from the menu. I can go anywhere in the model that I'd like and click equals and enter that expression. So weight of nylon 6, you see it shows up here. I can click on that, hit enter. And now I have a function for 4 grams. That function is the parameter that we've set up. I'm also going to do the same thing for the amount of polypropylene in the handle, as well as the energy that's being used to fabricate one toothbrush. By setting up these additional parameters, we're going to have a much more useful model where we have a few different levers that we can play with as we're making manufacturing and design decisions. You'll also see that I don't set any limits for the energy being used. Limits are always optional in parameters. We've now set up parameters for the whole model. Now, we can still run these models as we normally would with the default values that we've set up in our parameters. That is the same 4 grams of nylon 6 and 29 grams of polypropylene granulate. But what setting up parameters lets us do is run a bunch of scenarios side by side. To access scenarios, go to the top left navigation menu and choose Run Scenarios. Here we can add a variety of scenarios. We'll call our first one baseline. We'll call our second one lightweight handle. And we'll call our third scenario energy increase. For the baseline scenario, we'll leave our values unchanged. For the lightweight handle scenario, we'll say instead of 29 grams of polypropylene, we're using 18 grams. And for the energy increase scenario, we'll say instead of using 0.01, we're using 0.02 kilowatt hours. What scenarios lets us do is run these 3 scenarios side by side quickly. So rather than having to change the values for each input into the model in the model itself, we can do them all here and get the results. We can view a table of results for each of the scenarios. We can view the relative hotspots of each of the scenarios. We can view that bar chart that we saw at the beginning, or we can see a waterfall chart that shows us what are the changes from scenario to scenario. We can also stack scenarios. So let's say now our third scenario is lightweight plus a slight energy increase. What is the impact? Here we can see that lightweighting the handle has a really profound impact on the overall global warming potential of the product. On the other hand, increasing energy use, even when we double it, has a relatively small impact. This tells us our model is much more sensitive to the material weights than it is to the energy used. So one of the things that's really nice about scenarios is it lets us start exploring our reduction roadmap. We can set up a bunch of scenarios over the course of the next year or two. Maybe we want to do this on a quarterly basis, and see what the impact of different initiatives would be on our overall product's impact. To illustrate this, I'll set up an example where, quarter by quarter, I gradually decrease the amount of polypropylene being used, and in the final 2 quarters, we have a slight increase in energy. By calculating these scenarios side by side, we can see where our reduction roadmap takes us each quarter and the total impact of our various initiatives. Thanks for watching. With that, you should have everything you need to start setting up LCA models, adding parameters, and running basic scenario analysis. In the next video, we'll look at dashboards.